Today, we're going to compare the brand new Reebok Nano X to the Reebok Nano 9. The X is the 10th version of Reebok's cross-trainer shoe for functional fitness. The Reebok Nano 9 is last year's official CrossFit training shoe. How are they the same? How are they different? What's improved? You're going to be able to find the Nano 9 for a discount now that the X is out. Which shoe is right for you? That's what we're going to talk about today, so stick around. All right, let's start by comparing the outsole of these two shoes. So as you can see, it is pretty much identical between the Nano 9 and the Nano X. So the Nano 9 has the two-piece decoupled rubber outsole labeled Metasplit, as does the Nano X. They are effectively equivalent. But let's talk about the features of the outsole, just in case you're not familiar with it. So this is a cross-training shoe. There is not a lot of deep tread here. It is very flat, all rubber. That means maximum contact area in the gym, on concrete, at the box, things like that. And it has maximum surface area. It is a pretty firm outsole. It is quite durable, and I can say that based on the levels of wear on the Nano 9. I've had these for quite some time. I wear them a good amount. I have a lot of shoes, so I don't wear them every day, but I wear them a good amount, and there's really almost no identifiable wear on the outsole, and that's a feature of cross-trainer shoes. They're built like tanks. They're very tough, and they're meant to last a long time. So let's look at the two different pieces of rubber here, because you can see there's two different colors, and normally in a shoe that would signify that the outsole is made from actually two different rubber compounds. I don't know if that's the case with the Reebok shoes. If it is, they don't highlight that in the marketing materials. However, what that does highlight in the Reebok Nano X and the 9 is the fact that this is a decoupled rubber outsole. So that's what this split is between the two pieces. They've decoupled the heel from the forefoot. And the idea being that when you heel strike, when you land on the heel, that split in the outsole helps reduce the shock that travels to the rest of the foot. So that's the whole idea between the split in the middle and highlighting that with the two different colors of rubber. Beyond that, there are some flex grooves here up front. Again, exactly the same as on the Nano 9. And these shoes don't have a ton of forefoot flexibility, but neither did the Nano 9. These, having been worn and used, are actually a little bit easier to flex. I suspect that's probably just due to break-in and usage over time, though. And it says Metasplit on the bottom. And I don't know what that actually refers to either. I guess that refers to the split heel or the split outsole. I'm not entirely positive. And they have, I think this element probably helps with the shock absorption as well. So if you could imagine on a heel strike, that gap probably helps absorb some of the impact or minimize the transfer of that shock forward to the rest of the foot. So let's look up around the side. On the inside of the shoe, we still have the Rope Pro labeling. So the idea being that this wraps up a bit so that you can grip a rope during a rope climb with the shoe. There's not a ton of material here, but this rubber protection wrap up the side, which is more or less the same as what was on the Nano 9, is there as well. So you can see this one's also labeled Rope Pro, and you can see where the rubber outsole wraps up a bit. But overall, this part is here to protect the upper from friction with the rope. If you've ever tried to rope climb with running shoes with a foam outsole and a lightweight upper, the rope can more or less instantaneously shred the foam and the upper if you're using a really, really lightweight pair of running shoes. But hopefully you've not experienced that for yourself. So we've got the Rope Pro there. We've got the rubber protection wrap. If we look around the heel, you can see, it's the same. You got the rubber protection wrap. You've got some sort of split here. You can, of course, see last year's shoe was officially labeled CrossFit. They do not have that marketing arrangement with CrossFit for the year 2020, so the word CrossFit does not appear anywhere on the Nano X. But, we all know what the shoe is for. Okay, so having talked about the outsole, which is the outermost part that touches the road, let's talk about the midsole. The midsole being the interior part that sits between the insole and the outsole. So it's the middle layer of cushion and shock absorption in a shoe. Can't really show it to you, right, because it's on the inside of the shoe, but we can kind of describe what we do know about it. So Reebok claims it's a lightweight EVA foam cushioning with a compression molded midsole. It basically feels very similar to the Nano 9, but what Reebok is claiming with the Nano X, they're actually claiming that there is a decoupled midsole in the Nano X. So talked about the decoupled split heel on the outsole, but there is actually a decoupled midsole in the Nano X. And the reason for that is for all the same reasons that you have the split outsole to absorb shock, smoother stride, and things like that. So the Nano 9, they do not claim had that feature. They did claim it had the decoupled outsole, but not the decoupled midsole. So they claim that's for enhanced runnability. So you're probably wondering then, does it work? Is it true? Can you feel the difference? Me personally, I cannot feel the difference in the Nano X of that decoupled midsole. Honestly, this shoe, the cushioning, with the outsole being the same, with the midsole being very similar, and the insole is identical, it really, the cushioning, the runnability of the shoe, if you will, feels identical to me. And here's those midsoles, or insoles rather, that you can take out. So very thin, tiny bit of cushion. These are basically identical from the 9 and the X. So one is labeled, this is from the 9, labeled CrossFit. This one is from the X. So overall, midsole changes, yes, in the Nano X. Do they make a difference you can feel? Not to me. Maybe someone that runs longer distances. I mean, these are cross trainers, right? These aren't meant for marathon training or long runs. Might be able to tell the difference, but for me personally, I cannot. The one other thing we should probably talk about here is the heel to toe drop. So the Nano 9 had a 4 millimeter heel to toe drop. That is, your heel is 4 millimeters higher than your toes. That is pretty typical for a cross trainer. They're usually known as being minimal drop, or what they call low profile shoes for stability. So to be a really versatile shoe, you want it to be more flat, not an outrageous heel raise like a weightlifting shoe or anything like that. So 4 millimeter heel to toe drop. Reebok has not published the heel to toe drop numbers on the Nano X. They just describe it as being minimal drop. But based on everything that I just told you and my own feeling of having worn and tested these shoes, if I had to guess, I'd say these are probably still 4 millimeter heel to toe drop. Now let's look at the upper. So you can see that there is a difference in the flex weave material used on the X as compared to the 9. So the pattern, it's much more intricate looking, right? Here you've just kind of have that generic weaved appearance of the flex weave. Here you've got, like, it varies, and they've got these little highlights there and things like that. So overall, I like what they've done with the X. It looks better, more intricate, but not overly busy or anything like that. And this is another X here. This is the one I've actually been wearing more to test, but same kind of thing. You can see that more intricate design on there. And really, it's still tough, very tough. It's a 2-layer kind of thing. So there's a little bit of stretch to this, but I'm pulling this away from the inner mesh liner, and if I put my finger through here, so you can see my finger, right? There's definitely two major layers of material there, just like on the 9. So same thing, you can see my fingers through. What's on the inside is a very comfortable kind of, they describe it as being like a booty type of fit. So you can see there's this interior piece that is what's directly in touch with your foot. And then there's this cage structure that is actually very tough and robust and kind of keeps things tight. That's really no different than the Nano 9. So it had the same thing, right? It had like the inner part. This is very soft, a little bit of stretch, comfortable material, goes all the way up to all over the entire upper, and basically makes for a very comfortable fit and feel. And I'm happy to say the Nano X, the upper feels better to me. It feels more comfortable. So it kind of cradles your foot. It's soft. It's got some stretch to it. And when we talk about the tongue, you'll see the tongue actually has stretch to it now, whereas the tongue on the 9 did not. And, does it matter if you have a stretchable tongue? No, not really. But usually, like these stretchy kind of materials usually give a better fit, better feeling of comfort and things like that. And the Nano X, this is very subjective, but when I put this on, it feels like the upper fits better. It's more comfortable than the 9. I also think the X looks much better, again, just because what they've done with it visually. So those aren't necessarily performance attributes, but they do kind of speak to, well, why would you want to buy the Nano X? Well, it looks better, in my opinion, and it feels better. And if my 9s are worn out, maybe I want to get the Nano X. Okay, let's talk about width of the shoe. So you can see the two shoes follow pretty much the same layout, and the wide toe box is still in effect. So let me line these two up here, just to give you an idea that, hey, these are very, very similar, right? Nothing's really changed in terms of the width of the shoe, the shape, and that's a good thing, because one of the greatest things about the Nano is that crazy wide toe box. So just as wide as the Nano 9, very comfortable. Your toes likely won't feel like they're being pinched together like they do in a lot of other training shoes, Nike Metcon 5. And you can see it's over the widest part. It's well over 4.5 inches wide. This is the widest training shoe that I know of, and it's the one I recommend for people with wide feet. And if you want to let your toes really spread out and work, the Nano line is still the best for that. So that is the discussion of how wide the toe box is. It's still very good in the Nano X, and that's a good thing because that is one of the strengths of the shoe. All right, let's talk now about the tongue. So I mentioned earlier the tongue, it's stretchy now. It was not stretchy in the 9. The 9 had a lot of padding all the way down. The entire tongue from here to here is very padded, very thick. The tongue on the X is much more streamlined, so it's a little bit stretchy for one. And it's very thin in the center. It's thin from here forward. So just thin, stretchy material, but it's got these two padded sort of bolsters on the side. So whereas you had a ton of padding all over with the tongue in the Nano 9, it's a little more strategically placed here. To be honest, I like a more streamlined tongue. I like the stretchiness. The bolsters only go into here, though. It almost feels like in some cases, if you crank the laces down, you're going to get a little more sensation of lace bite because of the minimal tongue padding after about this point. So be aware that there is a difference there between the two shoes. All right, and let's talk about the other big difference is the collar, right? It comes up much higher. It also has a high density foam sort of semicircle all the way around the collar. So this is a very padded, very dense foam, and you've got this part that comes up much higher in the heel. So you had not as high in the Nano 9, and the foam, there is foam here, not as much, not nearly as much as in the Nano X. So I do find the collar, this part, again, feels more comfortable because it kind of better cradles your foot with that better feeling upper, and then it feels more supportive around your ankle. It also, though, it has the effect, it feels like more shoe. It feels bulkier in a way because of that, because all of a sudden you've got something that comes up higher and it's more constrictive on your foot, so to speak. But really, does that make a difference? No, it doesn't. But it does feel like you're wearing more shoe when you've got the Nano X on as compared to the Nano 9. Overall, I never had any issues with heel slippage in the Nano 9. So this heel area was shaped quite well for my foot and came up very high. I never had any sensation of heel slippage. When I wear the Nike Metcon 5s, this part doesn't come up as high. It doesn't fit my heel as well. And especially on the Metcon 5, when I have the hyperlifts in, I get a lot of heel slippage, which is annoying. It's not a showstopper, but it doesn't feel right. Absolutely no heel slippage either on the Nano X. And the heel cups, this heel cup, to me, it actually feels stiffer. And, there's a plastic piece on the interior here to give the heel strength, right? Because you're squatting, lifting weights. You can't have your foot, moving around in the shoe. This helps keep the shape, keeps your foot in place. Feels stiffer on the Nano X, and that just could be because they had to come up higher with the material. But to me, it actually feels like the heel cup is maybe a slightly thicker kind of plastic or something like that. Let's talk weight. So the shoes are very similar, but there is more material in the Nano X, right? The collar comes up higher, there's more foam here, and things like that, even if the tongue is a little more minimalistic. The Nano X men's size 11 weighs 14.4 ounces. The Nano 9 men's size 11 weighs 13.5 ounces. So about 9/10 of an ounce heavier on the Nano X. More material to the shoe, it makes it weigh more. In general, this kind of seems to be the trend with cross trainers. They're not lightweight running shoes, right? These are built much more tank-like than a running shoe. So they are heavier. Where a running shoe might be 9, 10, or 11 ounces, these are in the 13.5 and 14.4 range. Toughness is what it's all about with the cross trainer. Okay, so here's the other question that always comes up with cross trainers. Can you run in them? Yes, of course you can run in them. You can run in just about any shoe, right? But that doesn't mean that I would recommend you go on a marathon wearing a cross trainer. So you can run in these, right? But they're cross trainers. There's a minimum of cushion. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in the section on lifting weights. But, there's enough for short runs, sprints, things like you would do in the CrossFit WOD functional fitness. Yes, you can run in them. Is there a noticeable difference in running between the Nano 9 and the Nano X? Not to me. So even with the addition of the decoupled midsole that we talked about earlier, they still feel very, very similar. I wouldn't say the Nano X is a better shoe for running than the Nano 9 for me personally. Another common question, can you lift weights in these? Absolutely you can. Again, flat, minimum heel raise, but a very firm and stable heel in these, right? Minimally cushioned, you can squat heavy in these, you can deadlift, you can do the Olympic lifts, you can do all those things in quite well with these cross-trainer shoes. And that was the same for the Nano 9, right? The Nano 9 was the same way. Heel very stable, that strong heel cup, and didn't have a ton of heel raise, but that's okay. You don't absolutely need heel raise to lift weights. So, and actually, I find that shoes like this with the minimum drop, I actually prefer these for deadlifting personally. I don't like wearing weightlifting shoes for deadlifting. I don't need that heel raise. I do like weightlifting shoes for squatting, though, I will say that. But yes, you can lift weights in these. I don't think the Nano X has anything in it, though, that makes it a better weightlifting shoe than the Nano 9, to be honest. Let's talk fit and sizing. So, based on the fact that there are a lot of similarities, the outsole's the same, the shape is the same, the midsole's pretty much the same, I would recommend you order your regular shoe size, especially if you have a size you're comfortable with the Nano 9. It's going to work for the Nano X. And I believe these run true to size. Men's size 11 fits me perfect in both shoes. That is my normal size. The length is good. The width is really good because of that wide toe box. And that is what I would recommend. Order your normal shoe size. Okay, so that was our comparison of the Reebok Nano X to last year's Reebok Nano 9. There are a lot of similarities, but Reebok has kept many of the great features of the Nano 9 and carried them over to the Nano X. The Nano X has a similar outsole, but sports a new decoupled midsole, an upgraded upper that is more comfortable and more visually appealing, an improved tongue for comfort, and a new higher collar with dense foam also makes the Nano X a more comfortable feeling shoe than the Nano 9, even if it's a little bit heavier. From a fit and feel perspective, they are pretty much identical. You would want to order the same size of your Nano 9 in the Nano X. There's really no difference in sizing. And the Nano X keeps that excellent wide toe box of the Nano 9. So that was our review. If you have any questions, please post them in the comments. I will answer as best I can. And if you like this sort of content, please subscribe. We post new shoe reviews regularly. Thank you. Have a good day.